Hi, this is John Hart, and welcome to another Valleys of Numenor Lord of the Rings update. At this rate, I'll never get another original episode in. Uh, anyway, as probably a lot of you have already heard, there's going to be another Lord of the Rings movie coming out. Peter Jackson's involved. I'm not really going to go into whether or not I think this is a good idea, whether I'm excited or upset about this. A lot of the people are out there, they're giving their opinions about whether they're overjoyed or filled with dread. Not interested in that. Honestly, we're really not going to know what type of film, what quality they're going to do until War of the Rohirrim comes out this Christmas. This is like the first time that they're going back to the Middle Earth stories, but unlike The Hobbit, where film had its issues, I'm actually surprised it turned out as well as it did. If you watch the appendixes, which are must viewing if you're a film fan, both the original Lord of the Rings was and The Hobbit, to show how something can work out when everything kind of goes right and how things work out when everything kind of goes wrong. So definitely, if you're a film fan, if you're a film student, you got to watch all 6 of them. They're excellent. But we're not going to know where their mindset is at until we see what they're going to do with War of the Rohirrim, because it's a different type of filmmaking altogether. It's anime. They're going to have to basically create a story out of almost nothing, out of a couple paragraphs. So we'll see how they do with that. If that's able to be done successfully, I'd be a little calmer about the movie coming up, going forward. So let's just lay the groundwork. In 2026, probably December, most people are guessing, since that's where all the other Lord of the Rings movies come out. Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, and Phillipa Boyens are attached to produce, and Fran and Phillipa, along with the screenwriters for War of the Rohirrim, they're going to be putting together The Hunt for Gollum, which is going to be both starring and directed by Andy Serkis. So he's the main focus of this. I mean, he's the pinnacle of this type of acting. He's broken so much new ground on it that he's kind of comfortable with it, and it's helped him be a director. Some people have been liked what he did so far. Other people are like, but he's done a lot of work. He did a lot of second unit work on The Hobbit. So what I'm going to do here is look at A, what the story could be, and B, what the limitations of the film are going to be as far as who's in it and who could possibly come back. So let's start out. I have here I believe these are the 1982 editions of the Ballantine Lord of the Rings trilogy. So we go to page 90, and it's in the chapter Shadow of the Past, which was practically the first that Tolkien wrote when he got the idea of how he was going to do the sequel to The Hobbit, after they said, but we don't want the Silmarillion. We want a sequel to The Hobbit. So he's like, okay, I'm going to give you a sequel to The Hobbit, but I'm going to give you a sequel to the Silmarillion too. Yeah. So anyway, basically on page 90, when Gandalf is talking to Frodo, it talks about the time that Gandalf actually caught Gollum and tried to get him to tell him where the One Ring was, because he figured out along the way, I think that ring that Bilbo has is Sauron's ring, but I don't want to tell Bilbo yet. Let me check with this guy. So he catches him, and he's not really able to get anything out of him. So that's Fellowship of the Ring. Then the next thing that they can use is in here, a good old appendix. So we got to go back to the Tales of Years that we did in the other video, like right when Rings of Power started. And because remember, we went through the whole second age. Well, they have the whole third age in here. Remember, that's like 17 pages. And you need to go right before the Great Years section. And that's where it tells a more fleshed out version of what Gandalf told Frodo. And specifically in 3009, Gandalf and Aragorn renew their hunt for Gollum at intervals during the next 8 years, searching in the Vales of Anduin, Mirkwood, and Rohavanian, which we saw in the Rings of Power, to the confines of Mordor. At some time during these years, Gollum himself ventured into Mordor and was captured by Sauron. Elrond sends for Arwen, and she returns to Ilmadris. The mountains and all lands eastward are becoming dangerous. Then, in 8 years later, Gollum is released from Mordor. He is taken by Aragorn in the Dead Marches and brought to Thranduil in Mirkwood. Gandalf visits Minas Tirith and reads the Scroll of Isildur. So that's basically from the Lord of the Rings. It's all they have to work with. I looked through here when, Frodo and Sam run into Gollum the first. There's nothing in here about that. Maybe just a couple sentences or two. So that's all they got to work with. However, if they want to make a decent story out of this, they're going to need to read but not use this. Because in here, in the section about the Third Age, there's the hunt for the ring. And basically, it gives all the details, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5 pages. It gives the outline of the story. Now, they can't specifically use that because Warner's can only use the original published material from The Hobbit through the appendices of Return of the King. Can't use a Silmarillion, can't use Unfinished Tales or anything in History of Middle-earth. I did just order Peoples of Middle-earth just to try to see, so maybe I'll give a couple of ideas about that when I get it, probably next month. But they have to use that as kind of the basis of their story. They have to kind of take the pieces from Fellowship of the Ring and the appendices there and fit it into this story without using some of the particulars. So that's going to be their main job. Between the 4 screenwriters, they have to figure out a way to take those little bits and pieces out of The Lord of the Rings, those, what was it, 2 pages and 2 little paragraphs, and plug them into the thing from Unfinished Tales, but not use anything particular. Just make sure it's like, okay, go along. Okay, this is Gollum is really okay. As long as it matches up, they can use it. If anything doesn't match up, they got to get rid of it. So that's going to be their task first. My own idea is, remember when they had the idea about the Lord of the Rings TV show? They were throwing around some ideas, and one of them was a young Aragorn series. I have a feeling pieces of that are going to work their way into this story. That's because I can't see any other way that they can expand this and make it into a whole fleshed out story without kind of saying where Aragorn was. I mean, they can use the tale of Aragorn and Arwen. They can use that. They did a little bit of it in the movie. So they can take other pieces from that and plug that in. So my guess as to how they're going to flesh out the story is they're going to take the idea of the young Aragorn series, get the basics from that, plug in the little pieces from Lord of the Rings into the story in Unfinished Tales, and that's basically going to be your movie. Again, it's going to be hard to flesh that out, but there's enough in there that they can kind of plug in. They can kind of go into the background of some of the other characters. Maybe they even throw Tom Bombadil in there. Hey, who knows? Get him involved finally. So anyway, that's how I think the story is going to go. Now, as far as the actors, we know Andy Serkis. He's involved. The main two characters otherwise involved in this story are Gandalf and Aragorn. Viggo Mortensen is going to be 66 later this year. I don't know if he's going to want to go through any of this. The only thing I could think of that maybe keep him involved is do one of the flashback things. He's already king. He's sitting on the throne for a while. And then they want to talk about what happened when you searched for Gollum. So then that would get the other person involved. Sir Ian McKellen, at the end of this month, is going to be 85 years old. He's not going to be very active in this movie. If they're able to bring him back, and he's still able to do stuff next year to film it, it's going to be like what they did with Christopher Lee. Just, okay, we're going to bring him onto a set in London, and you're going to do everything here, and that's it. So it's going to mainly be an Aragorn and Gollum movie. I can't see how Gandalf is going to be heavily involved if they bring Ian McKellen back in, unless they want to do some CGI stuff, which I don't suggest that they do. It's like, you have a couple scenes like the Indiana Jones thing with Harrison Ford. People still can't quite get used to that. So I'd advise them not to do that. Just work with what you can. Then as far as the other characters, Elrond is mentioned, so Sir Hugo Weaving will be up for it. They mentioned Thranduil, so Lee Pace could be brought back in. I don't know if Orlando's going to want to come back for a cameo, but it's possible. He could do it. He could not. Galadriel, Kate Blanchett's of him, should be available. And then Arwen, I don't know what Liv Tyler wants to do. But those are the characters that we know. And then, of course, Sauron, we can do whatever we want. He won't be played by any of the people in the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power show. That much we know. So they've got the work cut out for them. They've got a bunch of old actors who hopefully will still be around in a couple of years when the movie premieres. And then they have the very bare bones of a story. They really have their work cut out for them. I wish them the best of luck. So if there's anything else that comes up, we'll keep track of it. But that just kind of really broke out of nowhere. So it's like people were not expecting anything to be heard about it this soon. But they decided to announce it to make sure the stockholders were okay over at Warner's. So fingers crossed.